Marco, so I've been trying to get you on this podcast for how long?
For how long?
Yeah, like a year, right?
Really? Has it been a year?
Yeah, it was a year last year.
Wow. Time flies when you're having
It
fun, they
does.
say.
Listen, I want to get right into it. So far, I've been starting every podcast by asking what camera to use
Okay.
and what is your go-to brand when it comes to anything.
What second question?
What is your go-to brand when it comes
Brand.
to like lights or when it comes to
Okay.
sound gear?
Okay. So I'll start by saying I am a gear whore. Can I curse?
You can curse.
I'm a
and do
gear
whatever.
whore. I love gear.
Mhm.
I think most of us that started in this industry have a sense of guilt when it comes to that.
I don't.
Okay. Hey,
Don't at all.
that's great.
I'll buy whatever.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I commend you for that one.
Thank you.
I, unlike you, am a gear whore. However, I think that as we go through our journey and time and years, you start to realize that you don't really need a bunch of the stuff you have.
Right.
I have a garage full of stuff. If anybody needs gear, hit me up. But I've gone through multiple brands, right? I think I started with Canon, right? And one of the things I like about Canon is it's just a really reliable system. Obviously, this is before mirrorless came out, right? And back when that was happening,
What year is this? So you know.
Oh man, I no. Let's just stay away from mirrors because I'm going through a midlife crisis with my age, and that's maybe on another podcast we talk about that. But I've been at this game for probably about 10 years. Okay. So I started with Canon, and before there was mirrorless, and then here comes Sony with this really great, amazing focusing system, right? And maybe lackluster colors, right?
Say the least.
For lack of a better term. And I heard it's gotten better, but back then it was just focusing. I figured one day I decided, look, either I have, I'm hitting focus on 3 out of 7 photos on Canon with really good colors, or I'm hitting focus on 9 out of 10 photos, and I have to work on the colors a little bit. So I went for the latter, right, with Sony. And so at that point, I was shooting. I remember it was a 60, Canon 60, and the L series, the trio, right? What is it, 16 or 1535, the 2470 and 7200. I had all 3. EF. And so, but I went with Sony. I went all in, right? Same lenses, same focal ranges, and Sony. And I was happy as can be. I was hitting focus on everything, which is great, right? But yeah, I mean, I had to really work those colors, right? And it took me some time, a couple of years actually, to actually come up with a look that I was happy within Sony. And I rode the Sony system all the way to the 7R3.
Wow.
And which is just recently, right? Yeah. And then here comes Canon back into the game with mirrorless. And they came out with the R, I think it was, right? And I was like, yeah, with no joystick, this little slider thing, it wasn't happening for me. But I was like, hey, they're getting into this game. Let's keep an eye on this. But then when the Canon R5 came out, I was like, okay, this is it, for me.
The R5.
To come back to Canon. And I did. I rented the body, and I was in love. It was like love at first sight again with Canon.
Right? Why? What was it that brought you back?
A couple of things. First of all, the focusing system was there. All right, so that's great.
That's what took you away from Canon to begin with.
Correct. Right. Nothing else. It was just better, more photos that are sharp versus less photos. You can't fix a blurry photo. You can't. You can fix a bad color, but you can't fix a blurry
People try to now. I think it's a trend now.
Yeah,
where it's
AI. I hear AI is getting better, right? And like this whole film vibe.
Yeah, right. It's like it's making a resurgence.
Yeah. But back then it wasn't. Like you needed sharp photos. And by the way, it's a style, right? So some clients and some people like that film look, and that's great, But other clients, fashion brands may not like that. Right. Sometimes when you get your writer for the shoot, like the documents that you kind of have to adhere to, they tell you like, hey, you can't shoot anything, sub F7.
Really?
Yeah.
They give you the F stuff.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to clothing brands, right?
Right.
Because they want to make sure that the clothes are sharp and everything's sharp from head to toe, regardless of the movement, right?
Right. I had no idea they gave you the directions were that specific.
Oh
to
yeah,
F stuff.
absolutely. So yeah, some
Wow.
brands will tell you can't shoot, F5.6.
Yeah, none of that bokeh. None of
And that's one of those things that I tell people all the time. Like, if you ask me what my settings are, I will tell you all day long. Like, for the most part, I shoot outdoors, so I'm going to be probably 1,000th of a second on the shutter speed. Nothing more open than f4.
Right.
Nowadays I'm like f7. Right.
Yeah.
And if I want to add a little bit of blur, I'll put like a longer lens, and then I'll
Just
put compression on it. Yeah. But I'm still shooting f7.
Right.
A lot of the work you see on my Instagram, my portfolio, some of that more impactful work that you're like, man, this is like really, really nice. It's like f7, f8, And so that's another thing. A lot of photographers say, hey, man, how are your photos so sharp? I shoot f7.
Yeah.
It's simple as that, right? It's not. There's no rocket science to it.
And do you shoot off-camera flash as well, or just?
I do. So
that helps you with the
correct. So that'll add a nice little punch to your images, right? I gravitate towards direct light.
Interesting.
So
like noon, 1 o'clock type of light.
Yeah. And I think
really,
for me, I had to adapt, right? Because we live in South Florida. It's sunny pretty much year round, right? Unless it's summer and we're at 3 o'clock, you get that rain shower. But I had to adapt. Like, I remember when I first started, like, I would look at work by like Danny Diamond, I think is one, like, big portrait photographer. Right?
It's been a while.
Yeah. I bought his like retouching thing, and I learned a lot from that guy, and he's like a 1 f stop kind of shooter. And that's where obviously you kind of are led by the people you're learning from, right? And I tried that, and man, I was missing focus. Again, 6D, right? So, but then once you get into the business side of things and you're working with clients, you start missing focus, especially on clothing. Clients don't really care about bokeh; they care about the product, right? It's not a style. It's not a style for them. It's about showcasing the product as best as possible.
Right.
So, if you want a little depth of field, then use focal ranges. But I'm still shooting at a minimum f4. Right? And I'll go through the photo and make sure everything's, the product. If you're shooting portraits, maybe you can get away with maybe a little bit more wide open, right? But for me, I like shooting portraits. That's kind of, I think, where most of us start.
Right.
But I like work that I call it stop the scroll. That when you're on Instagram, kind of, whether it's in the bathroom or wherever you're scrolling, that you're like, okay, whoa, stop the scroll.
Right? I like that. I'm gonna start using it.
Stop the scroll. Yeah. And so the images that for me have done that are, the really punchy, the ones that are, good color, good saturation, and sharp. I'm just driven to really sharp images. Now, granted, there is a trade to that, right? There's a for every action there's a reaction, and the difference is, when you shoot in hard light and you shoot sharp, you're probably going to spend a little bit more in your retouching, but that's the trade-off. I'd rather do that and have really commercial looking work that you could potentially have on a billboard, on a magazine, or wherever that might be. Versus, pretty bokeh photos.
Do you ever find it difficult to input your own creative style in a company shoot where the company has very specific requirements for an image or for how things look? Do you find it difficult to input your own creativity into that when where you have to maintain the guidelines that you have, that you were given?
So that's actually a good question, man. I like to think that I'm pretty fortunate on that aspect. But I think it's primarily because I developed my style based around what I saw clients do,
right?
Not what I saw photographers do.
Smart, very, very
so smart. I wanted to, for example, life goal is shoot for a brand like Nike, right? I'm looking at the kind of images that they're creating, the kind of body of work that they're creating, and I'm trying to style around that. Fun fact, a lot of people have asked me, like, what's your style? And my response is always, I don't have a style. My style is whatever my client wants. I can, you want pretty pictures, backlit and all, I can shoot that. You want lifestyle, I can shoot that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I would do for my personal work,
right?
But I can do it for anyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and I think that's important too, that photographers need to be able to adapt, because, if a client wants to, they like your hard light type of work, and then you end up in a scenario where it's, maybe a little bit overcast, you're going to have to use some strobes for that, right? You're going to have to be able to recreate that look.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be able to adapt to the request of your client. So to answer your question is, I think I've been fortunate in that aspect, because the style that I created is a style that clients look.
Right.
I can't imagine some brands like ever hiring me because they like my filmic look. I'm horrible. I don't shoot film,
Right.
I would love to, but for a couple of reasons, I just don't. I choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
A, is expensive. B, you don't get instant results.
Mm-hmm.
C, I can't adhere to my deliverable timeline. All my clients, when I shoot for them, get proofs within 24 hours. No ifs, ands, or buts. They get it, right? I could never do that with film. More importantly, it's a lot more effort and there's a lot more risk. So I try and mitigate risk as much as possible when I'm dealing with clients, right? So imagine that. Imagine you go out and you have a whole shoot and you want to shoot. You decide for whatever reason to shoot film. And then you go to the lab and the photos are blurry. Like, how do you come back to your client and say, I effed this one up, right? Like, there's serious budgets in line. So it's all about mitigating risk. So, do you want a filmic look? That could be potentially replicated to some extent, right? I get it. There's nothing will ever replicate that film look, right? But there's some really talented dudes out there that are doing that. And I'd be more than happy to outsource the editing to them.
Right.
Right.
It's funny. Like, I love that you mentioned that. I feel that sometimes you have to really understand what it is that you're good at and what you're not good at. And it's okay to not be good at everything. And it's okay to outsource. It's okay to, either hire. I know some people hire retouchers. Some people hire only lighting. Some people hire style and design and makeup, because you can't do it all.
Yeah.
And so you know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and you know what's applicable for that situation. And sometimes I feel like, especially in photographers, we try to do everything, right? And we try to be everywhere all at once at the same time. But as you get along in the industry, you don't have to anymore, because you're good at shooting, you're good at what is it you're good at, and it's okay to have a team of people to help you out with the things that you're not necessarily 100% on.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but I also think it's important for you to learn that
for
process,
sure,
right?
for sure.
So for me, I learned retouching. And I hired people to teach me about retouching.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually someone that we have in common, mutual friend, Danny. Right?
Shout out to Danny.
Shout out to Danny Batista, right? I really like his process, the way he retouches images, right? And I remember like doing a one-on-one with him. And I was, back then I was editing like Danny Diamond, like, and then something about the way he kept his skin texture that I was like, I need to learn this process. And I remember that's how I met Danny Batista. And I learned the process, and to some extent, I was doing it myself even, right? But I think that there comes a point in your journey that you have to decide, what part of this do I really like?
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm doing all this other stuff, I'm not growing my business. Because at the end of the day, you're still the accountant, you're still a marketer, you're still the sales guy, you're still the photographer and the retoucher.
Mm-hmm.
So I started what's called the process of elimination, right? The one thing that I didn't enjoy, and that was sitting in front of a computer retouching people, or retouching stuff. And so I learned the process so that I can create the look that I wanted to. And then it literally took me about 2 years for me to get off my head, because as artists, and dare I call myself an artist, I don't think I'm an artist by any means.
You're an artist.
Maybe we should talk about that. But as creators, it's hard to let go of our
Yes.
work,
Yes,
right?
it
To be like, hey, you take care of my file and do your thing. It was really difficult. It took me 2 years, and I finally found 2 retouchers, one who I favor, and she's amazing. And here's the other keyword: she. Right? I am in women's fashion,
Mhm.
and I think it's important to have someone that understands women retouching women.
Interesting. I like
So she's amazing, and she's responsive, and she is on time every time. I'm one of those that say, when I give you something, I'll say, okay, how long does it take? And if you say 3 days, I will tell my client 5 days.
Right.
I'm going to give you that space, but on the third day, I'm expecting you to adhere to your word. And she's amazing. Never let me down. Right. But it took me a while to get there. But one of the things I realized that once I started doing that, I started getting more business
that. Mhm.
because I know, I could literally shoot, kind of call everything, just give it a basic cleanup and deliver it to my client in 24 hours. Now the ball's on their court.
Right.
In the meantime, I'm focusing on the next job,
Mhm.
maybe the next sales opportunity, maybe the next meeting, right? And then when that order comes back, my girl's got it.
Mhm.
And then when it comes back, all I have to do is color grade it in accordance to the conversation that I had with the client, or maybe the client likes my style, then I just color grade it the way I would. But I think it's more about delegating. It's okay to delegate. It's okay to come with a team. There's shoots that I come in and, I bring a digitech, I have an assistant, um, sometimes, a backup person, a videographer, and then the images come back and they go to a retoucher,
Right.
right? Imagine if I had to do all of that, right? I would be limited. Maybe the results wouldn't be as good. Maybe I wouldn't be able to do as much. Um, you know, there's a lot of variables there because I'm wearing many hats.
Right.
Granted, I did mention earlier at the beginning, it is important for you to know this process for several reasons. You can develop your style and then you can request that because you know exactly what you want. But more importantly, I think it's about coming in strong, right? It's not me, it's we, right? And I say that every single time. Every time we've had a major job, I always get the client, hair and makeup team, my team, everyone in the room, and I say, there's a reason why we're all here. At some point, this client looked at all our portfolios. At some point, we vouch for each other. When I vouch for someone, you're putting your hand in fire for it, right? At some point, that happened. So let's make sure that when we leave this day, this client goes home thinking and reminded that they hired the best.
Right.
Right. And, and then the other thing is there's no, it's kind of like a cliche. There's no I in team. I remind people that all the time during a shoot. If you're not doing anything, ask someone to help. What can they help you with, or what you can help them with? Because the fortunate yet unfortunate side of this is that if we win, we all win.
Right.
But if we fail,
We all fail.
we fail.
But
I take the grunt for it, right? And what happens if I don't get that next job? Well, then they don't get the next job. You see what I mean? So in essence, we all fail. We win together, we fail together. I'm big into community, and I'm big into making sure that we're all part of, we're all one. There's no higher person, lower person. When I'm shooting, I tell my hair and makeup, whoever that might be, if you see something, stop me. Tap me in the shoulder and stop me. And because I'd rather fix it now than worry about it later, right? I'm okay with that. Please don't walk into the frame, right? But there is a process. It's okay to stop 2 minutes. Let's fix that little piece of hair. Let's fix that little eyelash or whatever it might be, and fix that. And then now we can keep shooting, as opposed to having 30 frames with a problem. Right. It's all about working as a team, and in the end, we all have to really look out for each other because we will fail together if we don't do that.
Right. I love that. What's something, just bounce off of that, What is a mistake that you see a lot of, especially beginner photographers make, even more advanced photographers, when it comes to just the industry in general, when it comes to planning out a shoot, and especially when they're dealing with paying clients, paying companies and brands who want to work with them? What's a mistake that you see a lot of?
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. I see this time and time again. And I tell this to people all the time. I'm probably not the best photographer you ever met. And I probably won't be. And I'm okay with that. But when it comes to customer service and relationships and making sure that my clients get that white glove treatment, I promise you won't beat me. That's just how it is, right? When you give a client really good service and you go above and beyond, that's what they're going to remember. Yeah, granted, you do have to deliver the work, right? But they'll sometimes overlook a couple of things if you're giving them an amazing experience.
Right.
Don't forget that. Yeah, sure, we deliver our product through a camera, maybe, but at the end of the day, we're still in that customer service business.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I reiterate this. I'm not a photographer. I run a customer service business. I happen to deliver my service through a camera.
Right.
But I am in the customer-focused business. Customers first, right? To an extent, you put everything in writing, blah, blah, blah. You check your I's and dot. What is it? You dot your I's and cross your T's.
There we go.
But we're still in the customer service industry. You could be an amazing photographer, but if you're an a-hole, that's what they're going to remember you by.
Right.
And people are not going to work with you. They're not going to want to work with you because you're an a-hole. Like, everybody's got an a-hole. Nobody needs another one.
Exactly.
Right? We all have one. Nobody needs another one, especially on set.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you are, hey, what are your suggestions? Maybe you're not doing something right, and somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder because they're going to look out for you.
Right.
Right? And the client will see that, and they're like, wow, like, he's not perfect, but he's got the right team behind him. And that's what matters. At the end of the day, he came strong with the right team to deliver the product. I think that's what clients remember. Clients want to know that you have the best interest in their brand as opposed to your best interest.
100%. Yeah, I think a mistake too that again, saying off of what you said, a lot of creatives are great creatives, great photographers, great editors, great videographers, whatever the case may be, but they're not so good as business people.
Correct.
Right? They don't have that customer service. They don't have that experience dealing with people and hitting deadlines and being transparent and having good communication. And that's where they struggle.
Correct.
They're the most talented behind the camera, but they can't deliver in the way that's appropriate to the industry that they're in. Correct. And so they struggle in the long run.
That's right.
And that's a big issue.
Look, it's got to be like riding a bike.
Yes.
Right? Once you learn how to ride a bike, you cannot forget how to ride a bike. Mm-hmm. Right? It's just, for taking a photo or doing video is like riding a bike. Once you're good at that, it's like second nature to you, right? Which now you can focus on the other part, which is the customer relationship side, right? The focus on your customers. That is an ongoing forever thing,
right? Because
every client has a different need. So that you got to get to the point where all this technical, all this gear, all this stuff, you can quickly walk into a room and be like, we're going to light this up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Right? And then, boom, done. Mr. Customer, here's the test shot. What do you think? Yes, I like that. Can we adjust? Yeah, absolutely. Let's adjust that. But I'm running it through them. You see what I'm saying? That's all about customer service. The last thing you want to do is get to the end of the shoot and they're like, I don't like that,
Right.
So
has that ever happened to you before?
In my early days, yeah, absolutely. I think we've all failed. Everything I know now is a result of somewhere where I effed it up,
Definitely. How do you deal with that in that situation where you have an entire shoot and the customer isn't happy, or they're not happy with how the images turned out in the end?
At the beginning, when that happened to me, I'm again customer focused. I remember it happened to me with one client, and I said, I will literally reshoot this entire thing. I'll bring the whole crew and I'll pay the models. Mm-hmm. That meant for me going negative.
Right.
And we did it again, and the customer came back, and then they brought me back for another shoot. Why? Because I actually put skin in the game. I actually paid for the reshoot, for everything all over again. I did it. I was negative on that job. But it didn't matter to me, because what matters is the customer. I want to make sure that they're happy.
Right.
And that the only reason why that started happening is back then I wasn't shooting tethered, for example. When you're doing these jobs, you got to shoot tethered.
Right.
You know,
Like,
I wasn't doing
it. You bring all the time.
It was like, oh, I can fix it in post. I can fix it in post, and it's like, no, you know, no, I couldn't.
What about during an outdoor shoot? You still shoot tethered?
I still shoot tethered.
Yeah.
If it's a client, I'm shooting tethered.
Right.
And fortunately, technology has gotten better, right? Like, I heard that maybe I used Capture One.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that Capture One now is like iPad.
Yeah.
I don't have to just roll up with a laptop, right? I could actually just plug in a USB-C to that iPad.
Mm-hmm.
I could actually just hand it to the client. You know, I have this process that I do also for like wireless tethering.
Mm-hmm. That's what I do.
Yeah, so I can actually be tethered to an iPad and still send a low-res JPEG to a smaller iPad that I could give to my client and be like,
that's what I do.
This is your thing for the day.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can actually favorite them. You know,
I do the same
let's
thing.
be efficient during the day, right?
What's some gear that you think is vital to a shoot that you have to have besides the camera? besides the camera,
you kind of need the camera.
Listen, I forgot the camera one time on one of my first.
My favorite is like I forgot the SD card. You know,
forgot the whole camera, bro.
Oh wow,
the entire camera is the beach shoot, and I get there. This is like when I first started. I get to the beach shoot, and the model shows up, and everything is great. And you know when you're a kid and you didn't do your homework, and you know you didn't do your homework, but you're looking through your bag anyway to find it, like for miraculous hope. That was me with the camera. No camera.
Wait. So you went in your bag,
and I'm here looking, not seeing the camera,
and there's no camera.
There's no camera, and I'm here flipping it around, trying to dump it out.
Was this like iPhone 1 era?
This is
nowadays I just whip on my iPhone. Be like, hey, we're gonna take care of this.
Get out of here.
If it's a test shoot. No, but I just got the new iPhone. I'm very impressed with the quality of the phone, man. Right. So we went to, I just came back from Paradise Challenge.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
And Dante Tiro.
Mm-hmm.
So the trick in Jamaica, right, is so humid that if you leave your camera in the room, when you walk out, that thing is going to sweat for like 3 hours.
Right.
So the trick for anyone, a Paradise Challenge 101 tip, photographers, leave your camera in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. There's a little cabinet, you can put your camera in there. Mm-hmm. And then there's a window in the bathroom. Open up the window and then close the bathroom door.
Smart.
So that the camera is always, at room temperature. You can walk out with your camera and go straight to shoot.
Right.
I guess the first night Dante didn't know the 101 tip or maybe forgot. Whatever the reason is. Here's Dante out on the beach. And this camera is literally sweating. Like it was just,
fogged up sensor. And
everything. Lenses, man. Like he had it in the sun. It was like an hour and this camera's still sweating. So I had just gotten the iPhone and I was like, hey, Dante, here, man, take my iPhone. My man did a whole shoot with the iPhone and video and that whole thing. And I sent them the photos. Make sure you hit up Dante and check it out.
iPhone.
I think he shot Nat Got Back. That's her IG, Nat Got Back. And he shot it with my iPhone, man. And I looked at the photos and I was like, man, like this is good, I mean, granted, you can't probably put that on a billboard or on an ad or something like that.
For Instagram.
But for the gram, I was impressed. And it shoots raw, so I was like, you got range in here to play around with this.
I think that goes to show that it's not about the gear at all.
It's not about the gear. I've done shoots with iPhone. I've done now video with the iPhone. And you're right. It's not there's people out there making a living from an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not about the camera. It's about, your creativity and how you exploit these tools. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're just tools. Mm-hmm. You could create great artwork with a pencil and a piece of paper, right? Same way that you can create amazing artwork with Illustrator and a badass Wacom table and the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about the tool. It's about your abilities to exploit these tools to the best that you are able to.
Do you feel, and this is something that I've been feeling lately, with like the rise of TikTok and the quality of phones. Like, do you ever feel that maybe there's not going to be a place for people like us, like in the future?
No, I think the more these platforms grow and every day seems like there's a new one, right? Mm-hmm. there's more opportunity, actually. I look at it the other way. There's just more opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think, however, what is important, and I'm guilty to some extent, is lack of evolution as creators.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, if somebody were getting started right now and they say, well, I love your work, like, or what should I be doing? Learn video. Just learn video. I came from video. My background is film and production. That's where I started all.
Likewise.
And somewhere along the line, I was like, I like stills better, right? But it's come back around. Like, the cameras are getting so smart now that at some point you're going to be. You can do it now, given how you shot it, right? But at some point you're going to be able to grab frames and use that. I've done that. I've grabbed frames from 4K and used them for the gram.
Really?
Absolutely. You can. There's certain things you have to do in order to, to be able to get a good frame, because there's motion blur in the whole thing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you're like increasing your shutter, why wouldn't you be able to grab a frame?
And the average person wouldn't even know the difference.
The average person wouldn't. And there's all these tools now, AI now, that will like sharpen your image, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's if somebody asked me right now, like, what can I do? It's, hey man, learn video, learn how to story tell, learn the process of capturing an audience through a series of either images or clips, because that is a talent in its own. The tool you use will be irrelevant.
Right. How do you capture a story? Like, you personally, what is your process of capturing a story when it comes to photo? Because you're very, very good at that. You're very good at telling a story through frames. And there are other photographers too. We spoke about Dan earlier. He's very, very good at telling a story through frames.
Yeah.
And that's an art that not everyone has. Like, I struggle with that, being able to have a bunch of stills and you still feel an emotion from those stills, because it's never just one image. It's always a couple that make you feel something.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your process of telling a story through photos? Like, how do you look at an image or a set or a model? Like, how do you direct that?
So I don't look at an image, I don't look at a model, right? I look at, what's the story that I'm trying to tell? And then I start putting in the elements, the ingredients for that story. Hey, you're going to make a smoothie, right? You know what that smoothie might taste like, or what you were trying to build. But, you got to put strawberries, maybe, whatever, almond milk, whatever ingredients you're going to put in there. Right? Those are elements that you need to fill to create your story.
Mm-hmm.
For me, storytelling is an ongoing challenge, to be honest with you, because it has to be. I've been looking a lot at like films and being inspired by films, right? Because a film is a 2-hour story, right? An ever-ending or never-ending story, right? Depending on the ending, like it might be. So my process really starts from like reading, looking at old books. One of the things I don't do is look at Instagram for inspiration.
Why?
Like, y'all, if you're doing that, you need to get out of Instagram.
I do it all the time. Like, I look at you for inspiration all the time.
I don't. So actually,
I have so much of your work.
Somebody hit me up recently about, this same exact question. And I said, do me a favor, mute me.
Really?
Mute me, mute. And his work was beginning to look exactly like someone else, someone we both knew. And I said, you need to mute this person, because they're influencing your process in your editing, in your shooting style. You're not evolving. So I said, mute me. And I kid you not, I could probably show you the DM about 3 days ago. The Instagram kind of shows you what they want you to see. And his feed came back on my scroll. And I was like, stop the scroll. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, that's homie,
Yeah.
And then I went to his IG and I looked at his last 12 posts and I was like, wow. You know what I'm saying? And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, man, I don't know what you're doing, if this is the result of maybe even the conversation that we had or whatever it is you're doing. it's made a significant difference in the way your work is being perceived, at least to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's very commercial looking now, right? The colors, everything looks very, very clean. And the response was, it's actually an exact result of the conversation we had. He's like, I stopped being influenced by the Instagram.
I love that.
And so how do I get my inspiration? I look at the legends, man. You know, I look at people like, I'm trying to think, Aaron, right? I look at his work, Slim Aaron's. I have all his books, man. I actually will sit there and go through books, photo books, you know, because ultimately we're just kind of doing what they did with a variation. So why am I going to look at someone else's work on the gram? I'd rather go look at the masters. Right?
Interesting.
I look at fashion photographers back in the days, right? You know, I'm a huge fan of like put a speed light on your camera and shoot direct like that, and get a lot of motion and reaction through that. So I look at those kind of works, and I let that stuff influence my upcoming work, right? I recently put out a quick series of images that we shot in Jamaica, and it was inspired by somebody whose work was shot in the 1950. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I put my spin to it, but the inspiration came from that, and nobody will ever know because he's not on Instagram, right?
I love that. That's a really good point. It's funny. I tell this story a lot. About a year and a half ago, when I called you up, and I was super happy to send a photo. I went, Marco, bro, I'm gonna send you some photos. Tell me what you think. And I remember you called me back, and you were like, "You got a few minutes?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?"
I remember that.
Are you sitting down? I went, "Yeah, what's up?" And you went in on me, right? Yeah. Like you went in on my shadows and my lighting and everything. But that's stuff that we need. And I always tell people all the time, because I always tell them the story, where you can't look at Instagram to see like your level. You can't look at models commenting on your photos or likes, because that doesn't tell you really how good of a photographer you are. I'd rather go to my peers because they're going to be brutally honest, like you were, like ridiculously honest, and it's a good thing because it makes you better.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Some people get butthurt over that.
I love that though.
But look, one thing about me, you've known me for a while, right? There's no gray area with me. It's either black or white, right? I'm very binary. One or zero. Sometimes, you know, my wife will say, like, your bedside manner sucks. Like, you're very
to the point.
Yeah, very direct, but, you know, in the interest of being efficient, right? There's a reason why you came to me and asked me a question.
Right.
And I could find ways of spinning that around, but ultimately, am I really helping you?
No.
Right? I'm not. I'm just going to butter up the truth somehow. You know, I'd rather maybe sting a little bit, because you're going to remember them and be like, man, Marco told me this. And
to this day, I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
To this day.
Yeah. That's the conversation I had with this cat, right? About his work. And I was like, stop being influenced by me, by this other person you're following because your work is looking exactly like it. You know, for example, let me give you an example. In Jamaica, I met Mike, orangutan. Man, him and his team are phenomenal. Great humans, such an amazing vibe. He's got a specific look to his work. Right? And some people try and replicate or maybe looking at his work. Looking at his work. And subconsciously, they're mimicking his style. But here's what happens. Let's say you were doing that, or I. And then I start putting out work. Are they going to say, Marco, that's such a great shot? No. In the back of their head, they're going to be like, that looks like Mike's work.
Yeah, it happens.
And in the end, you're actually just promoting someone else, not your own. So I have a deep admiration for Mike, his crew, the way they work. I got to see that front and center in Jamaica. And I was like mind blown, right? Amazing team. And it comes back to the conversation we had before. He has a team. Yeah. It's not Mike. Yeah. It's the orangutan posse. I don't know if posse is the name. But
the family,
the orangutan tribe. Tribe, that's the word.
The tribe.
And I'm like, that's people want to work with him. People want to work with them, not him. It's not Mike. It's the crew. It's the tribe, you know? And he's very all about like, come into my team.
Right.
So long as you're invited. And that's cool too. Because he's like, yo, I'm going to check you out.
Right.
I'm going to see what you're really about and if you fit in. Because if you fit in, come in. Right.
No,
I have a lot of respect for that man and his team. But there's a lot of people out there that are looking at his work and they're putting out work that's very similar. It's flattering, but ultimately you need to develop your own stuff. Yeah. And he did. Yeah. Right. And that's what makes him unique. So when you hit me up, you know, I was like, you know,
went in on me. This still hurts.
Yeah,
man.
No, man. It's not about it's not about being painful, man. It's about just being real. Like, if I asked you a question, I expect nothing but the truth.
Of course.
The reason why I'm asking you a question, I'm actually putting myself in a vulnerable state. And when I ask you a question, I expect nothing but the truth. I need to be willing to accept the truth, whether it hurts or not. So when I actually value that, when somebody comes to me and asks me for my opinion, I'm not going to go out there and judge your work. I actually don't like doing that because I understand that some people get really hurt or offensive or hurt. You know,
you didn't care about my feelings.
But you came to me, brother. Like you came to me.
I know. No, I love that.
And I think when I called you, I was like, "Hey, man, can I keep it real with you?"
Yeah, exactly what you said.
You know,
are you sitting down?
Are you sitting down, please?
Yeah.
But you know, I still do that, man. Like, I think it's important to have a little group of people that you trust
100%
for things that you can reach out to. I'm gonna give you a case in point. Just yesterday, I got off the phone with Ronald Wayne. Shout out to my homie,
Ronald Wayne.
And we were having a discussion, and it was about working with an agent, right?
Like an agent as a photographer?
Yeah. And I kind of ran the scenario with him, and he just kind of shed some clarity into the scene, you know? And I was like, yo, thanks, man. Like, those are the people you should and should work towards having around you. You know, people that you can rely upon that will always tell you the truth. With me, man, the punches still hurt, right? But I'm glad you're still sore because you remember,
100%.
Right? You're gonna remember that. So, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
But again, what you need to be okay with being vulnerable, right? And when you ask someone about anything, business, photography, style, editing, whatever the case is, you need to be okay with willing to hear the truth.
Right.
And anyone that tells you otherwise or butters it up, you need to find someone else. Sorry. You know, because every day we wake up and we take our first breath is a blessing, which means we don't have a lot of time in this world. You know, we get better with time, but we don't have a lot of time. So having peers that you can rely on to tell you the truth, honest truth, whether it hurts or not, I think that's priceless.
No, I love that.
So shout out to Ronald Wayne.
Shout out to Ronald Wayne. Are there any things that you as a photographer still feel like you need to improve on?
My video.
I like your video. I think you've done some good work on video. Like simple stuff, but simple is always
very simplistic, man. You know, this comes back to outsourcing. If I know I got to do a job and there's going to be a video involved, I'm gonna bring in a camera operator.
Right.
I'm just not good at it.
What do you say then?
But my clients want specific look. So, which means you got to think about this, right? If my clients hire me to create a video and they like my style, my editing style and my stills, and they want that replicated and look, that's just editing, homie, and lighting. How you lit it, how you lit that scene or whatever. The camera operator is irrelevant at that point. You just need to hire somebody that understands how to get, you know, good exposure and focusing, right? Maybe a focus puller if you need that. But the rest is just editing, right? So why am I going to try and sit there with a camera and mess that whole process? I'd rather bring in an operator that can handle that. And then, you know, work the magic on post-production. Give it my, you know, the Marco look, right? Comes back to or I could try it, save the money, and then fail, and then I won't have a client anymore, right?
I see what you mean.
I'd rather outsource that. So if I could do, something that I could get better at, it'd probably be video. I know you said photography. And listen, even in photography, man, like there are things that I'm like, that could have gone better. But it's nothing that I'm like, whoa, serious problem. Like I need to stop and address it. No. Like the cameras nowadays, they're so smart, man. Like soon we're gonna have a 50 stop dynamic range camera. Like it's just gonna happen. The evolution's happening, right? So like it's getting really difficult to take a bad picture, And then plus the other thing too is I'm all about mitigating risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna bring in the right model. Actually right now we're talking about a job that the client wants to go shoot it in Tulum.
Okay.
And the client was like, well, you got any model recommendations? And guess what I'm going to do? Yes, somebody that looks amazing, but I'm going to get somebody that knows posing, right? That is really comfortable in front of the camera, understands her angles, and understands direction. I'm not going to bring someone that I have to coach on set. That's going to put me at risk because earlier we talked about putting your hand on fire. Mm-hmm. So I learned so much about mitigating risks that the end result on the still side is almost very predictable.
Right. Which is a good thing. It's that confidence that you want.
Correct.
And that clients look for.
Correct. And so that comes back to, I wish I could do video better.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to.
But I think it's all about time too, man. Yeah. Like, I got 2 kids, I got bigger things to spend time with.
Right.
I rather just, for the few times that I get hired for video, I'd rather be just like, yeah, we will take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not me. We. It's always we with me.
Right. I wanted to ask you now. So I know you don't do these often, if at all, right? But there's a topic that I get asked about all the time, like in my DMs and from other photographers, is how do you deal with collabs and people who want to collab with you? Because that word gets thrown around every single day.
Yeah.
And there's a way that, again, it's how you say things versus what you're saying, right? There's a way that you say things in a way that doesn't offend anybody, that doesn't ruffle feathers, but it's also conveying the truth and how you feel. So how do you deal with models asking or brands asking to collab with you on work?
All right. So 2 very important things you just said. Models and brands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't collab with brands. Period. End of story. We don't collab. The reason why is because it's not a collaboration. I'm going to go and work for free. Then they're going to send me some product, but then they're going to take the end results and put it and sell a product, which they keep profits on.
Mm-hmm.
That is no longer a collab. Right? Now, if the collab says, let's do this together and I will give you 50 or whatever percentage of the sales, that's a collab. That could be a collaboration. But it almost never happens, right? So that's why I'm like, with collabs, with brands, no, because it's a one-way thing. And I also have a problem with this is funny, y'all. Like, for the most part, I'm in the swimmer industry. Yeah, I live in South Florida. That's kind of the space here. I think if it was out in California, I'd probably be shooting cars or lifestyle. But I've said this more than once. Models. Now, I'm going to look at the camera when I'm saying this. Models, listen. When a brand hits you up and says, we'll send you a swimwear, a bikini, or whatever in this case, a bikini, right? Because that's the space here. For some photos. And then you go and collaborate with a photographer. And then you send these photos to a brand. And then they turn around and sell more product. But they're sending you bikinis. At some point, I was like, I'm shooting summer swimwear. I should probably explore building a bikini. Dude, the average cost of producing a bikini, and that's labeled, packaged, some of these brands maybe not, but others, right? The average cost could range from $10 to about $70 to produce. Now, when you're selling a $70 bikini, it's probably going to sell for $300.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're selling a $10 bikini, it's probably going to sell for $50, maybe $40, right? So the average cost, we'll start on the cheap end, right? It's $10. And then the model's taking this bikini for $10 and then providing the brand back. She gets to keep the bikini. Wow. Realize this. The cost to produce, they may be selling, you're looking at their website and go, wow, this bikini costs $70, but it costs $10 to produce, which means you're now collaborating with a photographer and your time and their time. And then the photographer has to go and edit all these photos. That's more time. Average time, right? Let's say you shot for like 2 hours, right? And then if the photographer is efficient, maybe an hour editing these photos. That's 3 hours. Plus the time that the model back and forth with the bikini brand, right? Plus the time that the model and the photographer building the inspiration mood board. We'll say about 6 hours of time, right? For $10. Because that's the cost of the production.
Right.
That's the cost of the bikini for $10. And you're splitting this with the photographer. Assuming that y'all got $10, right? You would split that with the photographer. So you're working for $5. No offense, homie, but you're better off working at McDonald's or Burger King because they pay $14 an hour. And then you clock out and you're done. Right? That's why I don't collaborate with brands. That's why I don't also collaborate with models that bring their own product. You know? Now, collaboration with models, happy to do it. I actually, I have a running list. I get hit up by models all the time, like, hey, I want to collaborate. Hey, all good, man. I have a process for that. When a model hits me up, I send them a form. And this form has, here's my rules. To shoot with me, there's going to be BTS, there's going to be video. You do have to sign a model release, et cetera, a list of things. Fill out, name, email, address, not address, email, Instagram, your sizes, like small, extra small, whatever your sizes are. Your photo comfort level. My styles could teeter on the side of edgy. So I want to make sure that whoever I'm working with, and I also ask, like, how old are you, right? As part of signing a model release, you do have to show me an ID. Mm-hmm. So I have a process for that. And that all goes into a list. And whenever I have time that I'm like, hey, I want to try something new, maybe have some new piece of gear, or I want to try a new style or new editing style, or maybe I want to do some backlit, or I'm just inspired, I'm going to go through this list. And I'm going to look into the sizes, the photo comfort level, like Kiss and Point, for example. Right now, I got hit up by a couple of publications that want me to submit, for covers. And I was like, I've never been published. And if I have, I just don't know it. Not something that I would brag about, but I'm like, hey, I think that would be kind of cool, So guess where I'm going? I'm going to this list. And I'm looking at the models that align with that publication. And I'm reaching out to them and say, hey, here are the publications that reach out to me. Are you interested in doing this? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, perfect. But that's a scenario where, like, the publication is coming to me, right? Now, other scenarios are models that say, hey, I want to collaborate with you. There's a couple of things that I look at. One of them is I'm bringing in all this value into this side of the collaboration. What are you bringing from a value perspective? How is your bubble, and we'll call it bubble because it could be persona, body type, style, whatever it might be. How is your side of this mix gonna bring this whole, like balance this scale, right? To me, that's a true collaboration. So when people ask me to collaborate, yes, they get this form. And if it's not something like in the case I mentioned about this magazine, I will say, great. Send me some inspiration or some ideas you have. I'm going to put the ball back in your court and say, what are you bringing to this? Because a collaboration, as defined by some events that have happened in the past, is, hey, I would love to collaborate. Plan the shoot, Marco, style it, edit it, bring the suits, shoot me, all of that. I'm just gonna model. That's not a collaboration, yo. And then they take the photos, maybe put them on their modeling agency side. Now you're using my photos to actually make money, right? Is that really a collaboration? No, because they had no input into the final outcome. It was just like, I want you to work and give me all this good stuff. Mm-hmm. That's just maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. So what I do is, what ideas do you have? Bring some ideas. Oh, I just thought I'd shoot some bikinis and swimwear. I'm getting to the point that I'm like, that's kind of, I actually get paid for that. Like, that's not evolving my book. You're not really helping my growth. I'm just going to give you what I do for free. So to me, a collaboration is all about a 50-50 effort, right? Maybe there is, for example, beauty. Mm-hmm. I've done some really cool beauty work. I actually love it. Outdoor beauty. I can't sit in a studio and do beauty.
Outdoor work is some of my favorite.
I can't. I just can't, y'all. Like, please don't ask me to shoot beauty in a studio. I just get bored.
But you do pretty well though. Like, you've done some amazing.
I tried it. But as a collaboration, please don't ask me to do that. Right. For several reasons. One is boring. Like, it's just like it's just right here, I know some dudes that are really good at it, and hey, kudos to you. I actually admire the fact that you're good at that. I can't. I get bored. I'm an outdoor guy, I love outdoor beauty. Mm-hmm. And so, because I just like being outside. So, but here's the thing about beauty, y'all. Like, if you want me to spend countless hours retouching, or in this case, hiring a retoucher to edit your beauty style images, minimum requirements, hair and makeup.
Right.
And that's $250. So you have to pay this hair and makeup, because beauty is not just retouching. Like, right. There's a whole prep to it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you got to be on point. Like, your skin's got to, man.
It's a whole different industry.
It's a whole, man, editing, for me to edit a photo, I could probably knock it out in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. For me to edit retouch a beauty image, that could be an hour, two.
That's depending. One photo. That's one
photo.
Yeah.
Right? And so that, plus the photo time, mm-hmm. The least the model can do is pay the hair and makeup.
Right.
So that's one of those things that, like, when people ask me, I want to collaborate in beauty, I'm like, I'm kind of like, I'm start thinking of like the process to get there, right? Because everybody likes to see the end result. Right. There's a famous picture of the iceberg, right? Everybody likes to, everybody sees the top of the iceberg, but there's a whole bigger world underneath it. There's a whole process. I love beauty. I'm a fan of Mary B, the German photographer. Huge. I have her book.
Wow.
I don't look at her Instagram. I bought her book. And that's another thing. Like, if you really value someone, if you really admire, man, invest in them. She put out her book. I bought it. Whenever I'm feeling inspired to do beauty work, I go back to that book. And so, but I also know that to edit one of these images an hour, and that's hoping that everything was good, skin was good and all that.
Yeah. No, it's a whole process. But how many photos do you deliver in a shoot?
For a test shoot?
Yeah, a test shoot.
So a test shoot, you're gonna get about 15 photos from me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad at all. Yeah. I know for some photographers, they're gonna give you like 3, 4.
You get about 15 from me.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then you can actually buy all the unedited, although I probably will stop doing that. Because I've seen
you offer unedited photos.
Yeah, but it's gonna be a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All of them.
Yeah, you're gonna get the whole gallery if you want it. But here's the thing about that is that, I've seen like, Face App and that whole, they'll just use something, make themselves look like porcelain dolls, and then they'll tag me. I'm like, no, that's not my work.
Please don't tag me.
Yeah. So I'm a big advocate of the work is not complete until the retouching process.
100%.
All right, because I could take a photo and underexpose it and then bring it to life in post processing, right? So it's kind of like, you could go Publix and buy the bread and make your own cake, or you could go to the cake maker that puts the icing and the whole that's the real cake, right? I'm one of those. Like, to me, the work is not done until it's gone through my retouching process.
How do you feel when you deliver work and you're proud of that work, and then you see they put a filter over your work, or they put face tune it, and they alter your work after you've completed it? How do you feel about that? Because it happens all the time.
Yeah, it does. I have a very simple solution for that, because I have a lot of colleagues, male and female photographers. Y'all get butthurt over this stuff. And the simple solution is, you got paid, your job is done.
100%.
Simple as that.
100%.
Remember earlier I said, I don't think I'm an artist. I'm not an artist. I run a business.
Right.
So if I got paid, listen.
Do whatever you want with the photo at that point.
Do you think, right, that if you go to Rolls Royce, or if you go to Lamborghini, and you buy a Rolls, and then you go to a paint shop and you paint that thing purple, you think Rolls gives a crap about it?
Right.
You think they're going to be butthurt about it? Nope. Because you paid for it. They did their job. They got a customer out of it. Right. It's yours. You do whatever you want with it if you paid for it. I find that most of the times when that happens are dudes that are collaborating.
Right.
But again, how do you avoid that? Charger. Homie, I keep going back to Ronald Wayne, man, but he's full of those one-liners. Yeah. He's like, he said he's got this paid on, what is it?
Paid bookings
only account. He's full of one-liners. I think he put some up there some time ago that I'm like, spot on, man. Yeah. Like, you want to stop getting butthurt about stuff like that? Charge enough so that you could be like, yo, girl, do whatever you want with that photo.
I think he told me something a long time ago, because he shoots celebrities.
Yeah.
And he said, man, if these celebrities are going to pay my rate, and they're actual celebrities with tens of millions of followers, right? And they're still going to pay my rate. They're not going to try to shout me out in exposure. They're not going to try to pay me in a tag in a story.
He shot Serena Williams.
Yeah, she paid the full rate.
I would have, you know what I'm saying? Like, someone would be like, oh, Serena? Like,
yeah, I'll shoot for free.
Yeah, man. I want that on my book, right? But if Serena, the GOAT, man, like, she is the G of tennis, right? Of all time, yo. Like, Serena Williams hired my man Ronald Wayne continuously, not more than one. I've been on set with him, with Serena Williams. Amazing person, great team. And I'm watching Ronald, and he's like all about customer service. If she's paying his rate, that's gotta,
mean something.
That's gotta mean something, right? So why would he work for somebody for free?
For anybody.
For anybody. Correct.
It doesn't make any sense. Correct. And do you think that issue of constantly collabing, is that an issue of maybe low self-worth on the photographer side? Or is it just not knowing? Like, what do you think?
No. I think it's okay to, I'll come back to
I like collabing.
It's okay to collaborate.
I like to collab, yeah.
But let's define collaboration as a 50-50% effort.
Mm-hmm.
You bring your ideas, I bring my ideas, maybe you help style, we put together a mood board, and then we go shoot it.
Right.
And then now we're both happy with the outcomes, right? Not, I bring everything, you just show up.
Right.
That's, if you need a body to practice photography, by all means, hey, that's what you got to do. That's what you should do.
Especially when you're beginning.
Correct.
When you're very beginning, you have to collab to get that experience and to get.
I fortunately had kids, so I don't pay them. I had sisters-in-law and all that. If I showed you some of my earlier pictures,
I would love to see it. Yeah. Do you ever scroll back at your timeline like a year ago and then you cringe at yourself?
Man, I did recently. And I was like, evolution, man. Like, I was just really like, wow. But I'm not afraid. So I did a workshop some point last year.
Yeah, how did that go?
And in the workshop, one of the slides was like, this was my work. The first photo that I ever took and retouched that I was like super proud about was like big front and center on a projector. I was like, this is my work. This is where I came from. This is where I started. We all start somewhere. Everybody starts driving a Honda Civic before they get to the Rolls. Right? You have to be willing to accept that. You know, I mentioned earlier I started going to the gym, right? Back in the gym, just lifting weights and doing all that stuff. And one of the things that quickly you come to realize is that you have to be willing to hurt to evolve. Right? The reason why you go to the gym is to literally rip and tear muscle so that it gets bigger and stronger. That's what I did. I started there. And now I show it. Back then I was like, oh, I'm super proud. You're not gonna see that on my Instagram or anything like that. But I'm proud of that work.
Yeah.
And I'm so honored and flattered by the fact that somebody dared to get in front of my lens. Yeah, maybe I was like, come on, get it, do it, come on, help me out here. Took some sales on my side to get them there. But I go back to it. I can tell you my sister-in-law will never show that picture. Back then she probably thought it was great. Now she's like, whoa, Marco, what happened here?
Yeah.
But I think it's important, man. I think it's important to go back to your roots and see where you really came from,
Every now and then scroll to the bottom of your feed.
No, it's not on my feed, man. You're not gonna see. No, it's not. But I have it. It's on my work. If anyone comes to my workshop, they'll see it. My workshop is not really focused around shooting. It's really more focused around the business side, how to make money, like for doing what this is. But I showed that picture, man, and people are like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, man, that's me." Like the teeth were like super white. I shot it like a 1.2. Like the ears were blurry. One eye was like blurry. I lit her with a gold reflector, backlit, that Danny Diamond backlit style. I was like, man, what the hell was I thinking? But I was being influenced too, right? I was being influenced by Danny Diamond. And I was trying to replicate that look. That's flattery. I was trying to mimic his style. I was super proud of it. I'd never show that photo anymore. I won't text it to you. Okay. I'll show it to you. but that picture just doesn't see the light of day anymore. Right. I think my sister-in-law took it off her Instagram.
That's not bad.
Yeah, no. Listen, now it's bad, right? Back then it was the shit.
What advice do you have for, just to finish everything off, for every day is a new photographer? Every day the iPhone gets better. Every day somebody's interested in creating content. What's your advice to new and upcoming content creators about getting into this industry and evolving through this all?
Learn the business of content creation. Realize that the industry has shifted. I'm going to give you an example because I actually just had a conversation with my attorney about this. Learn the business of photography. Learn the fact that there is value to what you're doing. And you're actually bringing value to your client. You are essentially the marketing tool for a sales effort. That's it. How to expose, how to use a camera with enough practice in 3-6 months, you got it down packed. These cameras are the dynamic range is so good, you could probably shoot, for example, I shoot direct light, right? That's my preferred style. You could probably put that camera in auto, homie. Because if you realize, right, your subject's here, the light is here, everything behind them is the same exposure because the light source is this way. So I could put that camera in auto and shoot it. And the dynamic range is there that in post-production, you could do whatever you want with it, right?
Fix whatever needs to be fixed.
I just gave you the formula. I could actually shoot auto. Man, I should try
that. Let's try
it. But the business side, understanding the value that you bring to this industry is imperative. I'm going to give you an example. I was speaking with my attorney not too long ago. And one of the things that up until that conversation that I was doing is that in my contract, we all devalue social media, right? When I was shooting images, like perpetual access to or license to this because it's social media. Okay. And then my attorney came back and he's like, the unfortunate side about artists and creators is that they get more famous after they pass, right? And it's true. Look at like world renowned painters and photographers, right? They blew up after they passed away. So when you put out your work and you put it perpetual and you're giving a brand access to something forever because it's just for social media, are you really leaving a legacy for your children?
Oh.
Right? So he said, look, you got to look at your age. I'm 46, man. Beep that up. So you have to look at, like, for example, simple math. Like, hey, man, I want to be shooting another 20, maybe 30 years, right? That's my license now. You are not getting perpetual anything unless you actually pay for it. You're getting 30-year license for social media usage. Because my hope is that when I pass, these images blow up for whatever reason, and then I'm leaving something for my children to inherit. It's a very simple thing, right? In your license, remove the word perpetual, 30-year license. Simple as that. If a client comes back to you, we want perpetual. I was like, man, if you're still in business in 30 years, you should be paying for this license. Simple as that, right? The other thing, too, that he was like, unlimited usage for social media. Have you ever gone, when was the last time you went to Times Square?
20 years.
20 years. All right. It hasn't changed. If you go to Times Square, anybody in New York watching this, go to Times Square, look around. Tell me how many billboards do you see that are actually printed?
None.
0. Probably 1, but most likely 0. What I'm getting to is that what's to prevent a company like Facebook, Meta, right, in buying, I think it's Globalcom or whatever the company that holds all these billboards. And then now putting that as an option into social media advertising on Facebook ads, ad manager. So now your client that you gave unlimited perpetual license for social media use can actually have that as an option to run your picture, their ad in Times Square on a billboard. Because we all talk about like social media use, billboards is a whole different thing. But we're not really thinking that the medium has evolved.
Right.
So if you gave this customer perpetual license to use on social media forever, they have access to your image. And if Meta tomorrow, can happen, one of the world's richest companies probably, right, buys Viacom, that's the name of the company, and they start giving customers access to billboards to run their ads, your ad, homie, is on Times Square on a billboard, and you're getting $0 for it. And you're making a brand a ton of money.
I never even thought about it that way.
Neither did I. Yeah. The moment he told me that, I changed my contract.
That's an amazing resource.
So it's okay to give license for social media. But now my question is, what is the purpose of this image? And most people will downplay your work by saying, oh, it's just for social media. But what most creators don't realize is that social media is the biggest form of advertising. So if that is the case, then stop letting people downplay your work, because your worth is immeasurable to some of these brands. They are using your creative deliverables to sell a product, regardless of the platform. In this case, happens to be a digital platform. But again, let's think about 5, 10, 15 years from now, what's to stop Meta from starting or giving their customers the ability to publish in digital billboards? You see them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because Viacom got smart, right? They said, wait a minute, I could print this billboard and sell it for, $10,000. By the way, average billboard in I-95 here in Miami is about $10,000, right? So I could sell that to a client advertising for $10,000 for placement. We're going to print it and put it up there for 4 weeks. It's only 4 weeks, $10,000 4 weeks. Or I could give it to them at a lesser price if I put a digital billboard for a week. But I could also put 8 more because that billboard recycles every 50 or every minute. It recycles to another client, another client, another client, another client. And then here comes Meta and says, wait a minute, that's a business. I'm going to buy Viacom, or I'm going to partner with Viacom, push Facebook Ad Manager to allow Viacom to use their billboards, and I'm going to resell that. They don't even have to buy Viacom. They could be like, "Hey, we're going to partner up. I'm going to resell these billboards to my advertising clients, give them the opportunity. I'm going to take a cut, but you, the creator, just gave away your license for perpetual, just for social media."
Wow. You opened my eyes too. You have another copy of the contract so I can look at it.
My contract is on my website, marcocastrophoto.com. You can go in there and download it. It's been updated to reflect this specific scenario.
That is a great resource for anybody to have.
Yeah.
Guys, please check it out.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It comes back to having the right team, right?
Right.
I have an attorney. Everything I do is a result of somewhere where I screwed up. And one day I just got tired of it. I went to an attorney. He's like, here's how we're going to fix this. Hire an attorney that understands, creators and all that. But, when COVID started, listen, we're still dealing with COVID, right? You have a model release. Do you have a COVID clause in your model release? Do you have a COVID clause in your contract? Most photographers don't. And then you walk in, potentially exposing somebody. That person gets sick and dies, God forbid, but you gave it to them. Can they come back and sue you for that? Or their family, potentially? Maybe, yes, no, maybe. But the fact that there is doubt is enough for you to end up in court, enough for you to end up shelling out money to an attorney. So the best thing you can do, again, back to the beginning of this conversation, is mitigate risk. I'm all about that, man. Like, I have, mortgage and assets, kids, man, that the less risk I take, the better they'll be, And I think as adults, right, I think that's we're all going to get there at some point. You're going to have your kids, and you're going to have, you have this amazing studio and things that you work really hard for somebody to just come and snatch it from you just like that.
And it happens every day.
It happens every day. Happens every day. Listen, you get in an accident right now, somebody's going to try and sue you because, my neck and this and that, right? That's why you have insurance. So your contract needs to be rock solid to protect you, your business, and your asset for everything you worked hard for.
And your legacy, like you said.
And your legacy, right? Because I hope when I pass, some of my work ends up like Aaron Slim's. I don't know. I hope,
Sky's the limit.
One can hope, right? But if it did, and I was giving away all this work, what am I leaving my kids with?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Marco, man, I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you coming down here and talking to me and educating me on things that I should have taken more precaution on. And I'm sure just people listening to this are going to love just knowing and being exposed to this information, especially other creatives who don't know and didn't realize that there are elements of being a creative that aren't just the camera, that aren't just taking a photo and editing.
On the camera.
And being an entrepreneur is part of being a creative.
Correct.
And so thank you for that. Thank you for this knowledge. And I can't wait to have you on here again.
Thank you for the invite. And for anyone watching this, if you have any questions about everything that we talked about, just best way to get hold of me is send me an email. Please don't DM me, man.
Too many DMs? Too many models want to collab?
Too many robots.
That too.
I'm tired of that.
You know, you can block those, right?
Yeah.
Automatic messages.
Yeah. So pro tip, somebody shared this with me not too long ago. There's a way on Instagram that you say you can't comment unless you follow me.
Really?
So you enable that, and then the robots go away because they don't follow you. They look for like keywords on your where you're from, maybe your hashtags, and then they spam you. Basically.
Wait, there's a thing that says you can't comment unless you follow.
You can't comment on my post unless you follow me. That drops the engagement, but Instagram is dead anyway. Like who
cares about the engagement?
Yeah. And so it's just I enable that, and then I don't worry about robots anymore.
That is a genius. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Look, I had no idea.
Yeah,
that
at some
existed.
point, like robots were like posting on my stuff, and I was like just responding because I was like, well, maybe the algorithm sees it as engagement. It didn't make a difference. I just got tired of it, and then I enable that, and then no more robots. I get like 3 to 10 comments per post.
Yeah, from a robot or just
for like people now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's because Instagram is actually throttling who sees your stuff anyway. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's a whole nother podcast.
Do you think it's over, Instagram?
I think so, man. I think the platform is fading away, and I'm looking for whatever the next platform is. Here's the thing about this platform. No, don't get me started.
You don't like TikTok?
Here's the thing about the platform, Instagram, is that it revolutionized and it changed the way we creators create.
Mm-hmm.
We started accommodating to the way they wanted to see it.
Right.
Suddenly Instagram was like, no more photos. Everybody do reels. Suddenly everybody had to do reels. It keeps manipulating and changing the way you do your work. So for me, I'm like, I'm just here because I have to be. Back to Ronald Wayne. I'm just here. I'm on the internet because of the money.
Right.
We're all there for the money, right? So if it wasn't for the money, then why are we there? Like, I'd be somewhere else, right? So, yeah, I think the platform is fading. Maybe not dying, but it's definitely fading. And the only people that are really being successful in Instagram are the models.
Right. Wow. Yes. I agree with you.
Not the creators.
I agree with you.
But the creators are creating the stuff for the model. It's kind of weird, man.
I agree 100%.
But the people that are really being successful on Instagram are the models.
Mm-hmm. And I see it every single day.
Correct. So,
anyway,
last words.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.